Shalom and welcome to Che Languages. Earlier this week I made a poll about which language family you thought I was going to make a video about, and surprisingly the majority of you guessed correctly. I also foreshadowed this video earlier with my short at the beginning of the week, and of course I made this video at the beginning of 2022. So I've been meaning to talk a lot more about Turkic languages and to make this video specifically for quite a while now. But today is finally that day, so let's get stuck in with our first language. So the first language we're going to be talking about is one that's spoken within an autonomous republic within Russia, and this language is Tuvan, which is spoken in Tuva, also just known as Tuva, and here is their flag, and here's a close-up of the Republic of Tuva. And if you can look at these pictures of Tuvan people, you'll see that they are actually quite similar, culturally speaking, to Mongolians. They even have throat singing as part of their culture. But do not be fooled, these people are Turkic. So let's take a look at their language. In Tuvan itself, they refer to their language as Tuvatil. It's a Siberian Turkic language, more about that in a minute, and it has 240,000 speakers as of 2012. Its closest relative is Tofa, which is a critically endangered language with an estimated 40 to 93 speakers left today. This is also a Siberian Turkic language, which is one of the main sub-branches of Turkic. It's got 4 dialects. There's Western, which contains influence from Altai, another Siberian Turkic language. There's Central, which is seen as a literary dialect and has 2 sub-dialects, Ofyur and Bichem. There's Northeastern, which is also known as Toji. It's known for nasalization, and it's seen as a more traditional dialect because it contains lots more words to do with hunting, which do not exist in the other Tuvan dialects, so it's seen as a more traditional ancestor of Tuvan, though this is actually disputed. And finally there's the southeastern dialect, which contains the most Mongol influence. Here are the consonants of Tuvan. As we can see, they have a distinction between aspiration with the consonant phonemes p and t, and they also have this, which is somewhere between a w and a v. It's similar to the w or v sound that speakers of Indo-Iranian languages make. And then, as you can see with their vowels, the situation is a lot more complicated. They have this Scandinavian which we've discussed before if you've seen my Germanic videos. They also have this standard umlaut U, which is written with a Y in the IPA, that's a U. And then they have this, which is actually in the name of Tuva. It's more like Tuva, and it's basically like an umlaut, but in the back of the throats. I can't really make the sound, but it's more like U. Finally, we have the Latin script for Tuvan, which was developed in the 1920s, but fell out of use in favour of Cyrillic, which is used now. But the Latin script has some interesting unique letters like this, which indicates the R sound, distinguishing it from G. It has this, which is also used in Mongolian to represent the U vowel, and it also uses the soft sign to represent the back vowel that I talked about. And then I like this letter. It's an ingenious solution to a way of writing J. I don't see why that's not used in more scripts, to be fair. And then we also have the Cyrillic script shown here, which is what Tuvan is used, which is used to write Tuvan today in the Republic of Tuva within Russia. Finally, if we're to take an example of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have in both Cyrillic and Latin. This is what it looks like. Compare it with other Turkic languages if we have anyone who speaks the languages. And that's it for the Tuvan section. Although I would like to note that, as I mentioned, Tuvan is one of my favourite languages, favourite Turkic languages at least. Ever since I found out about it 3 years ago from Simon Reeve's documentary on Russia, where he visited Tuva, I've been fascinated ever since. I really like how they're culturally quite intertwined with Mongolians, although that does lead to some ethnic theories that are not particularly true. I do think it shows an interesting mix of cultures that's happened there. I think it's incredibly underrated, and if you listen to it spoken, it's a very beautiful language. But that is the end of the section, and we're going to move on to the next language of today, which is also one of my favourites. The backdrop for this section shows an area which is now a vast desert. However, until very recently in history, this was the 4th largest lake in the world. We are talking about an area where a language called Karakalpak is spoken. This is the autonomous Republic of Karakalpakstan that's within Uzbekistan. Here is the traditional distribution of the Karakalpak people. However, this modern map shows the linguistic situation. So, that very big blue sea you see there was called the Aral Sea. However, thanks to the likes of Joseph Stalin and the USSR, certain irrigation projects for cotton farming diverged water sources and led to the decline of the sea, and over the decades it's dried up. It's truly one of the worst ecological tragedies of the 20th century and expanding into the 21st century. Alas, this is a video about languages, not about history. It's relevant, however, because the Karakalpak people live in the delta, or did at least live in what was the delta of the Aral Sea, and it was hugely important to their economy. However, many people now are suffering the consequences. People who used to do fishing as their main industry now live hundreds of miles away from what once was the coast. But again, we're here to talk about the language, which is a very interesting one considering its position in Uzbekistan. In the language itself, it's called Karakalpak Dili, and as you can see, it's written within 3 scripts. The Latin script is becoming the most dominant one again, and in Tashkent, which is the Uzbek capital, where there is a community of Karakalpaks who speak the language, that's the only script used. In Karakalpakstan itself, the Latin script is being reintroduced and Cyrillic is declining, such as on this shop window here in the Karakalpak capital of Nukus. But you will still find Cyrillic script. The Arabic script died out pretty much. It has 583,410 speakers of a 2010 survey, which seems quite specific. It's likely that's not the precise number, and that will have changed since 2010. It's been almost 13 years since then. And it's official in the Republic of Karakalpakstan, which we've already said is an autonomous republic within Uzbekistan. So, unlike Uzbek, Karakalpak is actually a Kipchak Turkic language, which is one of the branches of the Turkic language family. It's the same one that Kazakh is found within. Uzbek is not, that's part of a different branch. So that's quite interesting for saying it's in Uzbekistan. And vowel harmony is very strong, even in the name Karakalpak. You find that in most Turkic languages. It's a feature that pretty much all Turkic languages have. So here's a picture of an ancient fort in Karakalpakstan itself, and this was part of the Khwarezmid Empire. I just wanted to add this in there because Khwarezm was a historical region of Central Asia around the Aral Sea, and there was a very short-lived empire called the Khwarezmid Empire, and the Mongol Empire absolutely decimated it. I don't talk about history here very much because it's a language channel, but it's such a niche empire, and I just wanted to mention it because we're talking about a language that was spoken in the region. Although the Khwarezmids were an Iranian people, not a Turkic people, so they were different. Just wanted to put that in there. Carrying on with the language though, there are 2 main dialects, northeastern and southwestern. There doesn't seem to be a huge amount of disparity between them. The main difference I could find is that the northeast realises this consonant phoneme as sh, whereas southwestern pronounces it ch. And while we're on the topic of phonology, let's take a look at the phonology. So here are the consonants. The consonants in the brackets are found in loanwords only, but they will occur because there's quite a lot of loanwords from languages such as Persian and even Russian. So you will find it. And let's take a look at the vowels. Once again, we have this, which was seen in Tuvan, but we also have these 2, which I'm not going to try and replicate. They sound like very open vowels, though. Well, one of them is open, one of them is mid. You can go on the IPA and find for yourself what that sounds like. Now let's talk about scripts. So traditionally, because of Persian influence, the Arabic script, or rather the Perso-Arabic script, was used to write Karakalpak. The interesting advantage of this was that it was not an abjad like Arabic or like Persian rather, but it was a full-on alphabet, actually having ways of representing all the vowel sounds, although you can see it gets a bit messy at the bottom where you have certain letters representing several sounds. However, in 1928 until 1940, this was replaced with a standardized Latin script, which, as you can see, can represent one sound with one phoneme very easily, using that apostrophe symbol. So you can see there's a difference between the letter G and the R, the velar fricative, because there's an apostrophe there. And they do the same with the vowels, with the O and the OE sort of thing in the IPA. However, after 1940, when the USSR took control of the region, the Cyrillic script was introduced instead and became the dominant script. It wasn't until 1991 that the Latin script got reintroduced into the Karakalpak language, and again, as I said, it's being slowly reintroduced into Karakalpakstan, and it's the only script that's used in Tashkent itself. Finally, let's take a look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Karakalpak. Here it is in Latin, and for those who still like to advocate for spelling it in Cyrillic, I have a version there for you too. Personally, I find it quite unique as a Turkic language. I have no experience with speaking Turkic languages per se, but it's got a different look to it. It doesn't really remind me of any other language. If you showed me this text and said what language it's part of, without knowing about Karakalpak, I'd have no clue. It looks very unique, and I do like the orthography, I have to say. But that's enough about Karakalpak, so let us move on to the last language of the day. When researching this video, I had no clue which language I wanted to talk about last, but a friend of the channel, Yakov Kodna, who helped me with the Manchu language section in my language revitalization video, suggested to me that I talk about Yakut, but it turns out Yakut is actually known as Sakha. Yakut was the exonym that comes from Russia, whereas Sakha is what the people themselves call themselves. Now they have this flag, but that is just the same flag as the Yakut Republic. And fun fact, the Yakut Republic, or rather it's called the Sakha Republic, is the largest republic in Russia, and it's larger than any country in Europe. It's huge. Yeah, it's very sparsely populated, and the language doesn't stretch across this entire region. In fact, it spills out to the side, but doesn't quite fill all the full extent of it from top to bottom. There's also another language on this map, highlighted in green, called Dolgan, very closely related. We'll get to that very soon. And here are some pictures of Sakha people today. So let's get on with the language itself. It's another Siberian Turkic language, just like Tuvan, and it's called Sakhatila. It has 450,000 speakers as of a 2010 survey across Russia. Now, that sounds like a lot of people, and it certainly is. Despite this, the language is still classified as vulnerable, even though it's comfortably used day to day within the Sakha Republic. It's related to Dolgan and Tuvan, but contains significantly more loanwords from Mongolian and Tungusic, which is an interesting historical point there. The Siberian Turkic languages are a branch that split off from Common Turkic first before any of the other ones, but Sakha in particular retains many old features that have just since been lost across all other Turkic languages. This is mainly to do with grammar though, so I can't really talk about it too much, but it's kind of to do with a bit of the consonant assimilation which happens, although it still has vowel harmony just like every other Turkic language, more or less. Here's the phonology, and we have the consonants, and you can compare it with the Cyrillic letters that are also used for it. And furthermore, we have the vowels, which is similar to other languages we looked in this video. Naturally, being spoken in Russia mainly, the Cyrillic script is used to write the language. The letters that are highlighted in red are only used in Russian loanwords or even Mongolian and Tungusic loanwords, because those sounds don't occur naturally in the Sakha language itself, though because of so much foreign influence they do now exist in the language, just not in native Turkic words. Furthermore, there was a Latin script that was developed in the 1920s and 30s, which is similar with the other languages we talked about in this video, and it fell out of use as the USSR expanded its control over the region. Finally, we'll take a look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights once again, here in the official Cyrillic text, and here is a transliteration, not necessarily in the same Latin script, but another unofficial Latin script that's also used throughout the language sometimes. So hopefully, once again, you can get a good look at the language. Sadly, there isn't too much more to say about it. It's not been hugely influential, but it was definitely worth mentioning, being the easternmost and northernmost Turkic language, so far away from all the others. And I thought it was very interesting to talk about, so hopefully you enjoyed this section. But now we are going to finish the video. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Which language in this video is your favorite? And please do consider subscribing, it really helps me out. And yeah, please tell me in the comments which language you like the most, which you would like me to talk about next time, and I'll see you next week. Yalla.